Very good evening and welcome to Biz First in Focus. Let's start off today's program with a look at some business news.
4 warships arrived in the island on the 23rd of March for Australia's largest ever defence engagement with Sri Lanka, the Indo-Pacific Endeavour 2019. Over 1,000 personnel on 4 vessels arrived in Colombo and Trincomalee. Australian and Sri Lankan defence forces will work together on disaster assistance planning, naval manoeuvres and military training activities to improve cooperation, familiarity and interoperability before the ship departs on the 30th of March, sailing for India. The ships will also sail for Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam and Indonesia and Singapore before returning to Australia. The Australian Embassy held an event yesterday to commemorate the Commonwealth war graves. Navy officers from the HMAS Canberra and HMAS Newcastle laid flower wreaths on the graves of fallen Commonwealth officers at the General Cemetery in Borella, Colombo.
And those who serve.
CEMS Lanka celebrated their 10th anniversary earlier this month.
We are really putting in all our efforts to bring more shows to Sri Lanka. In this 10 years of our journey in Sri Lanka, we have seen a lot of changes. We have seen a boom in the industries. We have seen a boom in construction, in the exports, in the logistics sector, in the shipping sector. I mean, this is what we have seen in all these 10 years. And we are witness to it. We are witness to what's going on in Colombo now. And it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to be a part of it. It's wonderful to have support from all of you, be it from the associations, be it from SLAPSIO, be it from the exhibitors, the local exhibitors in Sri Lanka, the international exhibitors who have always supported us in these 10 years.
Welcome back to Biz First in Focus. Joining us this evening in our studios is Mr. Rohan Maskarala. He's the CEO of the Shippers Academy here in Colombo. Very good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, the hot topic that is in public discourse right now is the budget for the year 2019. Although it was delayed, it's finally in its final stages of being passed in Parliament. Well, we all are aware of the provisions in the budget. I would like to first generally ask you, what's your take on this year's budget?
Yeah, as you said, it's a delayed budget, already 3 months gone. So of the year, so there's a 9-month period to implement.
So this 8 months, I believe.
Yeah, so April 5th actually it will be
Yes.
finally passed in Parliament. So once it comes into operation, they have a very short period as far as the year is concerned. But in my own opinion, the budget, the spirit of the budget is good. Under difficult circumstances. I appreciate for not giving handouts. A lot of people expected being an election year, many handouts, and taxpayer would have to bear that. But at the same time, instead of handouts, what I see is new credit lines have been opened up in different sectors. I look at in EEEs for exports, there's credit lines for SMEs. Entrepreneurship, the Enterprise Sri Lanka project has been continued, and
It's been expanded.
And empowerment has been there for the less privileged in terms of people who could not access credit, and also people who could not borrow loans for housing or things like that, and foreign workers who are bringing in remittances have been given opportunities to borrow at lower cost than the finance cost some of them are paying for microfinance companies in this country. So those things have been addressed, but allocations of money is not yet clear in terms of how they will do each sector, but obviously the finance minister must be having some plan, or the Millennium Challenge Fund may be coming into some of these projects, because Sri Lanka is having financial problems overall, which has to be corrected. Given that scenario, I thought it's quite reasonable, but they will have challenges in implementation.
Some economists were a bit skeptic about pumping such a lot of money back into the economy at a time when Sri Lanka is already suffering with massive debt repayments to foreign countries?
Yes, debt repayments, whether it is this government or next government, we have to do that. So
we have to pay it.
We have to pay it. That's another side of the story. But
so wouldn't the opening up of these credit lines create, additional debt, additional requirements to borrow more money?
Definitely yes, but it also might stimulate the economy more than what it is stimulated right now at going at 3.5%.
3.2.
Yeah, which is not good enough compared to South Asian averages.
According to the governor of the central bank, Sri Lanka's potential growth is at about 5%. We've fallen quite a distance short from that.
Exactly. So that may have many macro issues. If you ask the governor, he will analyze and tell you that.
Exactly.
It's just a statement that he made. Yes, the potential we all see, but then we have also all kinds of problems all around, starting from debt to political instability to policy consistency. All these things are creating issues to the Sri Lankan economy. So as far as I am concerned, I think these credit lines are for the less privileged. We must accept that a lot of people in this country can't, even if you are talented, you have ideas, you find it difficult to borrow from the formal sector. That is why they go and borrow from this also, all kinds of small microcredits, right?
Who don't consider the credit worthiness of their borrowers.
So some are ruined, some are just managing to pay that 50-100% interest and still surviving. So if government can give them that loan and give them some kind of a hand, that should be appreciated. That's why I said I appreciate the spirit of the proposal, right? There may be problems when implementation. For example, I don't think somebody, for example, couples have been given 10 million rupees to build a house, or
yes, exactly.
Right?
Newly married couples.
Nobody is going to borrow 10 million overnight, right? If somebody could, but if I am employed, I am getting married. My wife is also having a job. But if I can borrow 2 million and afford to pay, start building a house, right? I will be encouraged to do that. Whereas up to now I may have not any opportunity to borrow even 1 million. I don't have to borrow 10 million just because government offers me 10 million. I can have a start in life. I can put the foundation, right? So these are different models we can look at it. So it's a support scheme. That's why I say empowering people who are employed, empowering the Middle East workers who are bringing in the money, some kind of money. They know I can borrow at this amount. I only need 4 million. I don't need 10 million. So just that you don't have to calculate everything by 10 million and multiply it. Nobody is going to do that. But the government has put is a cap. Then the education for students. Now government has come up with a good solution, which I always supported, 13 years of education, right? Which means actually we will have labor force problem, because earlier if you fail your mathematics or Sinhalese or something, you are out of the education system. So people fall into the labor market, driving trishaws to whatever, and
casual
jobs, right? Now this scheme will ensure that people will go, 400,000 people will further go into further education, and if I can borrow 1.1 million, I can do a private sector diploma or something, a degree, if I want to get educated, right?
But then isn't there an inconsistency in this government policy as well? They are against private education mostly on the face of it, but then they are providing incentives for children to go and get education from private sector universities. Isn't this a policy inconsistency?
No, I don't think the government is against private sector education. That the medical sector education is the one that was challenged. Rest of the industries have so many universities, avenues to study, right? Whether you take electronics or computer science, architecture, there are so many firms. Even I am in the training industry of shipping and logistics. So I find students who are working find it difficult to pay and come, because their monthly salary of 35,000, 42,000 just find it difficult. So if the government is giving that loan for them, they will like to come, they like to get educated, and once you are educated with a certificate, your sellability of your job and the profession becomes higher for them. So it creates a next level of opportunity. So these are, that's why I said these are good credit lines in good spirit. Ability to service those by the government, whether they have the money, that you have to ask the finance minister other than me.
Of course, the practicality of the budget for 2019 will have to be tested in the 8 months that, of course, the government will have to implement the budget of 2018. According to Verite research, only 8% of the budget proposals were implemented. We will continue this discussion on the budget for the year 2019 after this short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Biz First in Focus. Welcome back. You're watching Biz First in Focus. Mr. Mascorella, getting back to our discussion. From the start of the program, you said you had a positive outlook on this year's budget. Speaking of another one specific proposal, we were speaking about the education sector and how much the government has invested or is planning on investing in that sector during this year. The proposal to provide about 70 million rupees to educate 14 of top-ranking students from the advanced level examination at international universities. What's your take on this proposal?
Well, that's a startup. 14 is the startup number. I heard the speech. They're planning to increase next year. In fact, I'm come from the education background. I very much support it. Sri Lanka has lost its quality of civil servants, general people who are working in various government institutions, because they have had no exposure to international education. So I can remember my parents' time, they always used to get scholarship to go to universities overseas. There are a lot of opening. Our university standards have dropped. Foreign universities have passed up with thousands of rankings ahead of us. So the exposure our students get, even if you are brilliant, you can't afford it. Right. So what he suggested is, brilliant students, here you get top universities of the world. Go and learn and come. That's what he's trying to put the message across. So I don't see any problem if the government can afford 70 million rupees. How much you said, 70 million?
Yes, somewhere close to that.
Yeah, so that's not a big number as far as I am concerned to educate a child. That's value for money. I think education is the most valuable thing this country is lacking. Our education system has failed for the last 20, 30, 50 years. After it was one of the top in Asia, our university, Colombo University, one of the top one time in the world. Today, where it's beyond the 5,000 ranking. So you can see what has happened in this country. So obviously, people, if you are brilliant and if you have sweated for your advanced level and done well, why not give opportunity to that child to go and see at Harvard, Princeton, or get the exposure?
I think you brought this conversation to a very interesting section. You said we were once at the top in Southeast Asia, and now we're way below. We've actually hit rock bottom,
yes.
In other words. But there are proposals in the budget as well. This proposal was a previous year proposal to provide tablet computers to students. Do you believe that this is a step in the right direction in setting right our education system?
Why not link to the current position of the world? My child, I will give him a tab. If I can give my child a tab, why shouldn't the village child get a tab? If he can't afford it.
But then the problem is there is a bit of a flip side to this entire story. The syllabus, or how these children are going to be educated through a tablet computer, was only formulated somewhere around February this year. The proposal was initially presented in the budget for the year 2018 or 2017, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around that, one of the previous years. But the syllabus and the schedule and how teachers are going to relate to students through tablet computers was only formulated somewhere in February this year.
So you are trying to say the cart was put before the horse.
Exactly.
Maybe that may be a strong policy decision if they have done so. But what I am trying to say is, a young student, 21st century world, we are living in connected world. I know Singaporean students have even the grade 1 students have tabs given by the government.
The Singaporean students also have proper sanitary facilities in every school that they go to.
So minister has in fact talked about the sanitary issue also, which is true. Yes, we are a poor country, I understand. But when it comes to education, you can't have double standards. You have to be in par with the world. People shouldn't be able to work in a digitalized world. That is where we have gone down as a nation. Our education, the general public's intellectual capacity to have a dialogue, understand. That's why people can con them. Right? People are not exposed for information, right? So from the small age, if children are trained, as you said, if the syllabus was not done for training, I agree, that's a problem. But that doesn't mean the overall concept of giving a tablet is wrong, because I give it to my child who is going for international school. If he has access to that, why should not the poor child have access to the same internet and information? Then my child, and the gap you are talking about, that social gap is being built. So government is trying to create that. Why should only Colombo children or the international school children or Colombo school children have tabs? Right? We can't be in one country then. We have socially two countries. So these problems have to be addressed. It's a good proposal, but I agree, if the system is not ready, it's like having a computer without software, right? That is a different question. That is wrong. right. But again, the intention and the principle, I
Again, the
evaluate.
spirit of that
They are saying
proposal.
something called the spirit of the proposal. You can criticize anything you want. I also can criticize. Find the wrong side of it and pull the string on that. But look at the positive spin of it. Shouldn't our children be equivalent to Singaporean students? Haven't we lost for generations due to the war, gone back as a country? Haven't our universities come down on ranks? Quality of education at schools have come down. So, only way to come, when you are down, you have to go up, no? Right. So, you have to train teachers, you have to bring in new systems, you have to connect to the world universities. If they are not allowed to come here, we have to allow them to go there, right. Somehow people's quality of life has to be improved, no. That is the responsibility of any government, right. So, the way they do it sometimes may be going can be criticized, but if, as I said, if the spirit is right, I support the spirit of the we as citizens must support with alternative mechanisms how to otherwise sort out. I can't put my child to the international school and tell the poor man's child, and I am not worried about you, right. I have gone to government school, right, but now those government schools quality from 25 years to now has gone down, because teachers have gone to the private schools, right. But we must think about the masses.
And the general public can't, most of the people can't quite afford to put their children into these private schools.
You can't. How can you? How many people can? That's about less than 5% of the population who can afford to put into private schools. What about the rest of the 95? We will have another revolution if we don't educate those people and give them the equal opportunities. We have had enough revolutions. Since I was born also I have seen revolutions. Before also I have heard revolutions after the independence. Right? Do we want another one? End of the day, they are all human beings, no? Right? We have to treat them equally.
Moving back to the commercial side of the 2019 budget, what are the provisions in the budget for the export sector and the shipping sector?
Well, the shipping sector, there were no specific proposals at all this time, except for reforms in terms of the Customs Act. Again, they has proposed that he will bring in step by step reforms in the customs. Shipping related reforms, he said he will continue what his policy statement that he announced in 2018. No specific new, which is liberalization of the sector. Whereas I can talk to you about the rubber sector. I represent the Rubber Manufacturers and the Exporters Association as the Director General. And for the first time, we have got one of the biggest allocations for the rubber manufacturing industry in terms of its backward integration. That is, the plantation sector has been allocated 800 million rupees, and R&D to diversify rubber products and increase our testing facilities, 500 million has been allocated. That is the biggest ever we got from a government in the recent past for the rubber sector. In addition, the national export strategy has been allocated something about 250 million to the specific project, and other small for the boat sector, all these sectors there have been allocations done in the. So, the next national export strategy itself has been supported continuously in the budget proposal.
Speaking about some of the other expenses of the government, administrative expenses, recently the President, making a statement, said that out of the complete amount of funds being sent to local government bodies, only 15% are being used for development activities or for the people in the area. 85% of these funds are being used for administrative purposes, to pay the salaries of the employees at the local government bodies, for the fuel of the council members, for their allowances, their perks, their privileges. Do you believe this is right?
Absolutely not. The problem is that we have created the monster. Who has created the monster? Continuously the politicians. 1.4 million people in the public sector, having about an average of about over 10 people for a single citizen on the government service. So, it was created by themselves. I mean, President can't say just that he didn't know about it, but he's been in the politics for 50 years. They all created this monster for votes. So, you can't blame the people, the 1.4 million who got employed, right. When you are employed in a job, whether you are in private sector or government, take about private sector, every private sector executive end of the year expects a salary increase to adjust to cost of living, inflation, right. If it is not there, even if they don't get a bonus, they are not happy. But some of these government servants didn't get a salary increase for 5-10 years. Right. So, it was given 10,000 I think at the beginning of 2015 and another 2,500 now this time added as a allowance. So, obviously, the government salary bill is going to
Increase.
that is true, but then you can't blame it on those people. It is what we have created, what they have created. They have to shoot themselves first before criticizing, saying 85% of it going for the administration, because administration, they have created administration that is not necessary, or they have failed to create private sector, the engine of growth, to create enough jobs, to create the conducive environment in this country. How can the country's private sector grow when there is continuous political instability, policy changes, right? Then the private sector won't go. Then the government comes and have to employ them in the government sector, take few thousand to the port, few thousand there and put them there, right. One time when I was there in the port, I can remember there were people for every 80 meters to clean the drain. Right. There were people taking salaries who were not in the port even, but they were living in the eastern province. They have been employed. Who? By these politicians. So, we have the problem with our politicians, we all know that, right. So, we have to correct ourselves of getting the right people in there on one side, right. They can come and tell us anything, but they are the ones who go and do those things. You and I didn't create from 700,000 jobs to 1.4 million jobs. Government didn't expand like that, no, there is no economic necessity like that, no. Now, those people are there. Now, we can't blame those 1.4 million people saying you should not get an increase. No, they are also living human beings. So, once you are in a job, you have to get your increment. So, that is what they have done, but I agree that there is a problem in servicing all these things.
It's a very interesting point that you brought out, Mr. Mascaralla. We will, of course, continue this discussion after this short commercial break. You're watching BizFest in Focus. Welcome back. You're watching BizFest in Focus. We're in discussion with Mr. Rohan Mascaralla. Mr. Mascaralla, we were discussing about the 2019 budget in the previous two segments. I'd like to draw your attention to something a little bit, on the same lines, of course, but more current and more controversial, of course. The Board of Investments. We've heard stories about many controversial investments through the Board of Investments. If I had to list some, the Volkswagen company, then the Google balloon project, and very recently the oil refinery in Hambantota that they said the Oman Oil Ministry is a stakeholder of, but then the Oman Oil Ministry comes and says that no, I'm sorry, we have no plans to invest in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I also heard this yesterday's story, and I thought it's very poor communication. When I checked up with my contacts, the project is there. But the communication of the Oman side of the story had been wrong, and I think they have corrected it also. I thought they have put a paper release today.
Okay.
That the communication that they did was wrong, and they have tried to further explain it. But it doesn't look very nice for a professional body. I think, as you said, even previous ones, how they have communicated and how they have created the impression versus what exactly happened on ground seems to be contradictory, which is not good for an investment body of the country.
So, Board of Investment is one of the main bodies that are responsible for bringing foreign direct investment into the country, and as viewers would have heard from politicians and economists and everyone, they say, foreign direct investment is required, is essential to get out of this economic trap that we're in.
Absolutely. We need so much of foreign direct investment.
And also recently our foreign, compared to last year, our foreign reserves have depleted from about $1 billion US.
That is due to the political crisis
as well, yes.
That had nothing to do with the BOI, but I have to agree with you that the Board of Investment plays a very important role in the country's economic activity. It was created in 1992 by late President Premadasa, and it was a very good success for a very long time. But then later, I think latterly it has not performed enough. But if there need to be reforms there, I think the minister has to do reforms to correct what the reforms that has to be needed to revamp the BOI, because it's a very important arm of government, and for the public of this country, we have a very professional body, and bringing in proper investors to Sri Lanka, market Sri Lanka properly, a lot of arms that need to function properly at the BOI. So, as far as the local companies who are all in the free zones are coming under the BOI, They have to be facilitated. Actually, at the initial stages, I can remember BOI was considered as a facilitator. Now there is a perception it's just another government institution. It has become an issue that it's really not playing its true role. So yes, I agree, these communications are very poor. It doesn't reflect right to the government, it doesn't reflect to the politicians, it doesn't reflect to the world. So we have to be careful of telling what we are saying, but as far as I know, on this latest project it's going ahead, that's what I am told. But on the other hand, a refinery for Sri Lanka is very much of a good news if it is coming. Rest of the story, I don't know behind the scene what it is. I can't comment too much about it without knowing about it.
Of course, all of these investments, all of these projects, these decisions are being made on behalf of the people, by the sovereign right vested in these, in the leaders of our country, by the people of our country. And the only way that we can, truly hold them accountable is if we send educated, qualified, and people suitable to lead us, to lead this country into a better tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mr. Rohan Maskorala, for joining us this evening. And that's it from Biz First in Focus for today. Of course, you can join us again next week. Until then, take care and God bless.